Today we're discussing the Marxist War on Reason. Marxists consider the soft sciences as the chink in the armor of reason, and so they attacked it. The strategy: nurture hatred and suppress logic. As I said in another video, they want to convince students, want to convince young people that the world is out to get them, and it isn't. It's not. The tactic: political correctness. To this point, the Marxist War on Reason has proven highly successful. The left's toxic brand of false logic has now infected the entirety of academia. The proof: universities routinely deploy DEI initiatives that nurture and promote nonsense, including their reality-defining queer theory and the absurd notion of skin color that begets critical race theory. These practices allow so-called historians to adopt a revisionist history that cherry-picks facts to spin false narratives, and the list goes on. Added together, all of this plays into the Marxists' tried and true oppressor versus oppressed routine, teased out through preposterous theories like intersectionality, proponents of which charge like insane chickens into a meat grinder in a race to claim the prize of the most oppressed. Right? Who wants to be atop the pyramid of oppression? And you can do that by claiming that you have oppression from multiple angles, right? Like you're a minority and, in race and sexuality or something like that. That's one of the most common methods. In other words, it's a shit show. Soft sciences, especially sociology, history, and humanities, rely on interpreting facts that can be difficult or impossible to quantify compared to hard sciences such as earth and life sciences. Soft sciences place more emphasis on the narrative that the facts they use to create them, and because of this, can more easily be influenced by political and other biases. Not long ago, and further on that, it's a cult. So basically they say you need to accept everything, and then once they think that you're, conducive to that, they'll go, oh, actually, you have to believe all these particular things, right? That's how cults work. Not long ago, reason served as a reliable deterrent to these biases. A historical narrative, for example, had to make logical sense by accounting for as many facts as it had at its disposal, not just the ones that agree with the preferred narrative. A glaring example is the 1619 Project. And by the way, for that, the 1619 Project, A Critique, is a really good book. If you want to pick that up, it's not that long, but it completely destroys that book. And basically, he tells you that all the historians quit because they didn't like the direction it was going. And the only people that stayed to finish the 1619 Project were journalists. And journalists aren't good at history, typically. The invention of Nicole Hannah-Jones and her motley crew of wannabe revolutionaries. The Washington Post observed, the 1619 Project started as history. Now it's also a political program. Well, as mainly a political program. The left-leaning new outlet almost got it right. If the writer omitted the word also, so the sentence reads, now it's a political program, it would be a solid assessment. Not a political science program, unless it was a Marxism and action practicum, but a blatant attempt to rewrite history according to the tenets of critical race theory. Instead of the proletariat pitted against the bourgeoisie, oppressed and oppressor, the 1619 Project crew wanted to sow hatred among blacks against whites, which in turn would spawn hatred against the Western gamut. Hey ho, hey ho ho, Western Civ has got to go, as Jesse Jackson put it in 1987. Things have only gotten worse. Jackson was talking about the college course Western Civilization, which used to be a graduate requirement when the university still made sense. Nicole Hannah-Jones and her stooges upped the ante. They mean Western civilization itself has to go. It's gotten that bad. And it's not over. Princeton University professor Matt Karp noted in an ex-post, the number one story in the U.S. history job market over the last 10 years is the overall decline in tenure-track job openings. But the number two story is the change in which jobs are being offered. Overall postings in U.S. history dropped from an average of 156 tenure-track jobs per year to an average of under 99, Karp wrote in another post. Even leaving out the COVID drop in 2020, the average over the last 2 years is 115.5. That's a substantial and possibly crippling decline, as D. Bester and others have noted. On the other hand, in the fall of 2011 and 2012, 10% of job postings for U.S. history professors were for African American specialists. By the fall of 2022, that number had jumped over 35%. And by the way, a lot of these new professors are pushing false history quite a lot. There's a bunch of different narratives about different groups of people supposedly visiting the Americas long before Columbus. Leif Erikson, I think that actually has some proof behind it, but people will claim that people from Asia, people from Africa, and people from Polynesian islands visited the Americas first, but there's no proof. It's just a theory. They say like, oh, it might be possible because boats. Well, that's not a good enough reason. You have to have more evidence than that, and it's not so easy to just go, thousands of miles across an ocean. So you need more evidence. I mean, it'd be interesting if it were true or if they had any evidence, but it doesn't seem to be the case that it's true. But people still push this what they call a historical fiction, kind of like Howard Zinn's A People's History. That book is based in history, but it's also largely fictional. I mean, you can annihilate it just by looking up the sources on the first page and how Howard Zinn used halves of sentences from different pages of Columbus's journals to push the narrative that he wanted, right? So it's quite biased. It's also, that book is just heavily plagiarized from Hans Koning and Gary Nash. And it's pushed so much in the humanities and social sciences that it's really quite disgusting. People will have that book assigned to them over and over again, and that's disappointing. But I'm going to end this here. If you want to read the rest of the article, again, check out dschooled.substack.com.